think our only real protection is nullification. The states have got to get together and just nullify this stuff. Say we're not fluoridating anything, and we're not putting lithium in our water, and the federal government has no constitutional authority to do such a thing, and nullify it. People should read his new book by Thomas Woods on nullification. I just recently read the history of nullification, and it's our greatest protection. The states got together and ratified the Constitution with the assurance that they would retain their sovereignty and rights as guaranteed by that Constitution. Now the federal government says, no, there's no states, it's only individuals, and the majority rules. Well, if you read these articles about this lithium fluoridation, that's exactly what they said. As one of them says, as long as the negative consequences or inconveniences are relatively minor, water fortification seems to be one of those cases where the majority preference and interest should prevail. Well, here's the problem. Let's look at fluoridation again. They admit, everybody admits, and all the scientific studies admit, that there's a subgroup of people that are highly sensitive to water fluoridation toxicity. People who have chronic illnesses, people who have chronic kidney disease, people who have certain neurological diseases, pregnant women, small babies. All those are at-risk groups. Well, their view is, well, they're a minority, so who cares? Let them be harmed. And that's what they're saying about the lithium. Well, yeah, there's people that could be harmed, but the majority should rule. Well, this country's not based on majority rule. If you read the Federalist Papers, there were great assurances that the Constitution protected the minority, the small groups.
Yeah, democracy's two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. And if the government can get 100 million fluoride heads to vote to take our guns, they can't do it. But it's the outrageousness, the nakedness of this tyranny, how they're just out in the open saying, yeah, we know it doubles bone cancer in boys. Yeah, we know it's causing arthritis. We know it's causing brain damage and macular degeneration. We know it's causing organ failure. We don't care. We're liberal. We love you. They know full well they're not liberal. They're a bunch of population reductionist control freaks that need to have their butts locked up in prison. I think we need to start getting really aggressive with these people assaulting us and our families. Doctor, I'll be honest with you. Every time I look at my children and think about how much trouble I got to go to protect them from these bastards, I get really angry. And I want to talk to you about, as a man, not as a top brain surgeon, not as a scientist, but as a man with family, how this affects you. Because let me tell you something. I'm against violence, but I am for defending myself. And I'm just more and more getting sick of these people and getting red-blooded angry. Oh, sure, I've got in my library over 100 government textbooks and white papers written by every major top government-funded scientist out there. And then I've got all the other government scientists coming out and saying this is deadly poison, they're killing us. And the government says, we don't care, it's going to continue. And now they say, yeah, we're going to give you vaccines that are live virus, re-engineered herpes virus. It's going to go in and destroy the receptor sites for hormones that cause stress and anger to make you be calm and happy. And why this will stop suicide, so everybody's got to do it. And in one of these reports, they say, let me just pull the report out. Here it is. Oxford professor Julian Savalayu says fluoridation demonstrates how populations of the future could be mass medicated through pharmacological cognitive enhancers. And he said, writing for Oxford, and he's their top bioethicist there, that when questions arise whether they should be added to the water, like fluoride, he goes on to say we need Ritalin, Adderall, and he lists a bunch of other chemicals. So Ritalin, Adderall, Prozac. I mean, Prozac increases suicide in all of the major studies that are out there, Dr. Blaylock.
Oh, exactly right. Exactly right. I have a friend of mine named Joseph Douglas who wrote the book Red Cocaine, and he's written a recent book called Mind Control. But he worked for the NSA for a while as a debriefer of Soviet defectors. And he debriefed one of the highest-ranking Soviet KGB agents. And we've gotten to be good friends for many years. And he sent me information showing me that the Soviets' program was exactly what you're talking about, controlling people's minds using drugs and sophisticated advanced technology and neuropharmacology to be able to control stress and apathy and concentration and susceptibility to brainwashing. Well, now I'm saying, things you're discussing and that both of us know about, we're sort of seeing the same sort of thing over here, the same dream where we can medicate the water, make people more compliant to accepting these ideas. We can make them more apathetic so they're less likely to react adversely to some of our more totalitarian schemes. It's a control method that was first intensely being studied by the Soviet Union, and the United States government was quite interested in this. Now they're pursuing it. So I think people are just not paying attention if they're listening to these people who say, "Oh, we're just a bunch of right-wing nutcases who see a conspirator behind every bush." Well, as Alex said, and both of us read the primary literature, what's being written by these people. In their writings, they openly talk about this. They don't deny that this is the goal they're seeking. So, you're kind of being foolish if you say, well, this is a bunch of conspiracy nuts. You better read their literature because they're telling you that, yes, this is what we intend to do. And I said that the book written by Dr. Lilly on the history of molecular biology, it's a history book. It's a science book. But she had access to all the Rockefeller files and tells that this is exactly what Rockefeller dreamed of, the day that he could, by biology, control human thought and behavior.
Well, Doctor, as you know, 150 years ago, or a little more than 150, Galton creates eugenics. The Royals love it. It says, we're the elite, we're allowed to rule. And by 1900, literally hundreds of white papers about drugging the water. Then they discovered DNA, and they funded the abortion, the Planned Parenthood, and it's all stated. And so modern science was interwoven in the last 100 years, and medicine and chemistry, with eugenics. I mean, my dad went to UT, and he said every class he was in, they taught him, you're the elite because you're going to, be going to medical school, and you're the elite because you have the highest test scores, and, should we drug the water? Because these were young people. They were just testing to see if they'd buy into the club to then be promoted. And then when my dad was top of his class, they pulled him aside and said, look, we're carrying out eugenics. And he kind of freaked out and, wasn't part of it. But it's not just my dad, it's everybody. I mean, let me ask you, Dr. Blaylock, when you went to several prestigious universities, did you ever run into this propaganda?
Well, yeah. I mean, and the interesting thing was, you talk to your colleagues, they were not opposed to these ideas. They thought they were good ideas. There's this elitist mentality that Tom Sowell wrote a whole book about, that they think that they should rule society, and your job is to do what they tell you.
That's visions of the anointed.
Visions of the anointed, and that's, it all stems back to an ancient principle of Gnosticism. And Gnosticism basically says that there are certain people on earth who have tremendous wisdom, and they should rule the world.
Well, that's what Plato said.
Right. And so, Eric Voegelin's a very highly regarded philosopher, historian, has written extensively on how Gnosticism was the birth of Nazism, Soviet communism, and all these collectivist ideas, that a small group should make all the decisions. Well, this paper that's written on this lithium, that's exactly what he says. He said that this is a revolutionary prospect, and we're going to harness water to control the population, and that it's a democratic idea. In other words, we're the ones who rule the majority, and we don't really care whether you object or not. We're going to do it. Look at the health care bill. Most Americans in the polls were opposed to it. Well, the elitists in Washington said, we don't care.
Yeah, it's a democracy. It's a democracy of the elitist control freaks,
right?
Not even their fake mass democracy.
Right, it's an illusion. They present the collectivist utopian idea and say, here's the plan, now implement the plan. And then they create their polls to say, well, people want it in our mind, and so we're going to give it to them.
Well, here's another example. They lie to us and say that our founders modeled us off of Greece. The founders criticized Greece, and it was only the elite families who were allowed to vote, 1 bucket white stones, 1 bucket red stones, and they would vote and say, oh, we disagree with Socrates, throw him off the cliff, or, you know, make him drink poison. I mean, they killed so many of those people who they disagreed with, who were part of the elite. So it's an absolute dictatorship of the scientific elite, and then none of us have any rights. And our republic is the opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the wording of this lithium argument they're making, they're saying, well, you know, most people aren't smart enough to understand how important this is, therefore we'll just have to force it down their throat. Well, that's what they did with fluoride, and look at what we've discussed so far. Well, it's DNA toxic. It's caused hypothyroidism. It's increased fractures, infertility. Several cancers increased in children dramatically. It's neurotoxic. Well, now you've created this destruction of the lives of millions of people, and yet they're still pushing the program. And they even have to admit that it doesn't prevent cavities at all. You know, I met with a group of dentists and gave a lecture on fluoride toxicity, and one of the dentists said, well, you know, we got to fluoridate the water because, you know, we take care of these poor kids in Jackson, Mississippi, and they all have rotten teeth that are crumbling. And I said, well, you've been fluoridating the water for 40 years. There shouldn't be any cavities. Yet you're telling me the same story that you sold this program to the United States more than 60 years ago, as if nothing's happened. Well, your fluoride obviously isn't working. They're all drinking fluoridated water. Their parents drank it. And yet you're still giving the same story that their teeth are rotting.
And then we've got all the studies admitting it's calcifying in the joints. I mean, now you got young people getting arthritis. They admit it's attacking the brain, the eyes. And it's nothing to do with teeth, ladies and gentlemen. Zero. It makes you servile. And now they don't even deny it. They say, hey, we're going to put Prozac, we're going to put lithium in your water, and all the major medical institutes and the U.S. government are on record doing the studies and getting ready to propose it. Why do you think they're coming out in the open? Is it arrogance or a counter to you and I and many others exposing them? And have they miscalculated by coming out in the open now?
Well, I think that they feel they're so close to winning the whole game that they're impatient. And they don't care if you know what they're going to do now. You know, for years they did it. You know, at my age, I remember the days when no one I would talk to had ever heard of CFR. No one knew anything about the Rockefellers. No one knew about the tax-free foundation's influence. You know, the vast majority of the public, that was something that was just a shrouded secret. Now it's all known. You can read extensively about it. So they have advanced this so far. They feel we're right on the precipice of taking over the whole thing, and nothing they can do about it. So we don't care if they know now. And so they're openly saying, yes, we want to control your minds. We want to make you where you can't have these emotions, where you no longer can independently think. We'll do the thinking for you.
And if you don't want government health care, we're going to call you racist. And if you don't want us to put lithium in, we're going to call you a tinfoil hat. And we're going, but after all these denials that this was to dumb us down and control us, you now admit it. And they look at you straight-faced in these news articles and videos and say, we know best, and you just want to punch them. I mean, doesn't it make you angry just as a man?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's infuriating because they're destroying the health of your children, and they expect you to just stand by helplessly and let them destroy your children. It's just like this vaccine program. There's no question that this massive vaccination of children is having a serious effect on their brain development. They expect you just to stand by and let them destroy your children. And they don't care whether you object or not. And, of course, that's infuriating.
Doc,
and this is what led the founders of this country to fight against England.
Doc,
this is why they formed a new country.